This is 5 Minute Feng Shui podcast episode 173, Signs from the Universe. Welcome to the 5 Minute Feng Shui podcast, where each week I talk about how to move energy and make money. You'll learn how to create a prosperous home and an abundant life using classical Chinese Feng Shui. I'm your host, Katie Weber, publisher of the Red Lotus Letter, Feng Shui Easing for Wealth. Each week, I'll cover Feng Shui topics that can help you improve your life, share inspiring stories, and always end with 3 easy-to-implement Feng Shui tips that you can put to work right away, and usually in about 5 minutes. Now let's get started on the 5 minutes that could change your life. Hello, my Feng Shui friend. It is a beautiful Tuesday afternoon here in South Texas, and there is a big wind a-blowing. It is March, and we are ending the month of March, getting ready to go into April here this week. And the lion of March has been roaring in all month. In fact, we've had very little of the lamb sighted around here. This has been a lot of wind, but wind, to me, big wind, especially in wind that continues, is a sign. It's a sign of change. And it's an element that I love. I love wind, and I love that feeling of air movement. It makes me think of time, and that life is moving forward, and that there's change and there's growth. And so I've always been fond of wind. And in fact, I'm especially fond of it because when I was a little kid, I think I was 6 years old, and I used to spend the summers where I live now, was where my grandparents lived. I live in San Antonio growing up, and would come down here to the Gulf Coast to spend 2 weeks out of every year with my grandparents. And one time I actually pulled out I had seen Mary Poppins. And so I decided on a very, very windy day, I would get out an umbrella. Well, I did. And I kid you not, that lifted me just a few inches off of the ground. And I got so excited because I just knew that I was going to be the next Mary Poppins. Just didn't have that cute Victorian skirt that she always wore. Well, today we are talking about signs from the universe and how signs of good feng shui in the environment and in symbols around you are trying to tell you something. And it's one way of kind of getting a read on a situation. Many times when we go into a situation, whether that is to, buy a house, or we have an important meeting to go to, some momentous moment is arriving, and you see something or something captivates you or catches your attention, and you just have a feeling, you feel that there is something trying to tell you something. And a lot of times it is. We're going to be talking about what some of the signs are and how you can interpret them and apply them as another way of using feng shui. Now, when we talk about feng shui, there's a lot of definitions. Some people call it the art of Chinese, art of placement, art and science of Chinese placement. There's all kinds of different ways to describe feng shui, but feng shui really is everything from a good landscape and beautiful topography with mountains or lakes or oceans, pretty designs. It might be just a beautiful breeze, a windy day like I'm talking about, or maybe it's things like inauspicious shapes, or maybe a shape that is appealing to you. There's so many ways that we can look at how feng shui can influence us, and we can read it as a sign. But feng shui includes environmental clues, like what we're talking about, whether you have a view of a mountain, if you have a pretty hill behind your home. That sometimes, though, there are some clues that are not as noticeable as a mountain or an ocean view. Sometimes they're much more subtle. So, for instance, if you ever walked into a home or an office and you felt uncomfortable suddenly at once, or maybe you felt very comfortable, or maybe your children became unruly, or your baby started to cry, maybe you just started having an itch. These are all signs that the feng shui of a space is not right, or there is some kind of energy that isn't harmonious with you. So let's talk about when you want to observe these signs. Now, important times might include like when you're searching for a new home to buy, or if you're having an important decision, or you're having an important discussion. Maybe there's an important event about to take place, like a birth of a child, moving, marriage, a funeral. Maybe it's a promotion or a graduation. Or when you're undergoing and beginning a new endeavor, maybe you're getting started in marriage, you're starting a business, something like that, starting a new degree plan. These are all ways that you might want to look around for signs as you are beginning to undertake these things or come to a new place. It's just to look around and see what the signs and the environment are telling you. Now let's talk about where you can look for these signs. I mean, they literally can be out your window. It can be hanging on a wall, on the radio, on the television, maybe even in a podcast. It really can be anywhere. So you want to stay attuned to what you see and what you encounter in an environment for that intangible feng shui stamp of approval, or sometimes it's a stamp of disapproval. So let's talk about what are some of the ways that you can read signs. So some examples of good signs are when children are happy. So if you're going to buy a house and your kids are happy and they seem content and they seem like they're in a good mood when you're in the home, this is all a sign of good energy. Happy children that are laughing and giggling are great reads of the environment. And if children are playing around your house, that's a really good sign, especially those cooing happy babies. Those are great signs, as is pregnancy. Let's talk about other signs that are a little bit more experiential, and that's rain. If you're outside and a light rain begins to fall, maybe you're considering a financial move or starting a business and rain falls. This is an excellent sign because water equals money in feng shui. A light, lovely rain is always a blessing and a good signal of prosperity. A rainbow is also another resplendent symbol of rain, and it's the unity of both yin and yang. So if you see a beautiful rainbow, that's a very, very positive sign, and something that was in the Bible as God's promise that the rain would end to Noah, that there would be good things ahead to Noah. So this is all part of what you can see sort of outside around you in terms of the environment. Sunshine breaking through clouds or streaming through a tree is an excellent sign of good fortune. Sun streaming through windows, as long as it's not blinding, that's a beautiful sign as well. Plants, this is one of my absolute favorite plants. If I've got a plant somewhere that is not really doing anything and then it suddenly puts on a bloom, wherever that plant may be, let's say if it's in the east corner of health or the southeast corner of wealth, then I take that as a very good sign. So when you see a plant blooming or a tree or flower doing really well, this is a great sign, especially if you're starting a business and you see pictures of forests or vase of flowers. This is a beneficial sign for your business. Look for plants that stand out too, that are blooming or that are especially or uniquely beautiful, such as a large, magnificent oak tree or a very special flower that only blooms a certain time. I'll give you a good example. All last year, I kept an orchid in my southeast kitchen window, and it did nothing. I bought it at the store, and it had a pretty little purple blossom, the stem of blossoms actually, and it had this beautiful stem of purple blossoms. And once that fell off, it just sat there. But I didn't give up on it. I just kept watering it every Friday. That's my watering time for the plants that I have in my kitchen window. It's every Friday without fail. Might be Friday morning, might be Friday evening, but it's Friday and I water those plants. Well, come to find out this year now has a much better energy, and the plants aren't there working to sort of stave off the 5 yellow that was there in 2021. Instead, the 4-star is in the southeast, and the 4-star is a star of flowers and of plant growth and beautiful blooms. And guess what? my orchid, the very first one that I've ever had and kept and maintained, now has a beautiful little stem of lovely lavender blooms. I'm so happy. And I took that as a good sign because when it began putting out this little shoot, this was right at a time that we were changing financial advisors. We went from completely different group, different company and everything. And, it was one of those things that, we'd been comfortable with our other planner for a long, long time and decided to make this change. And, when you're talking about your entire future and your retirement and investments and that kind of thing, there's a little nerves that go with that. And when I saw that lovely little stem just poking out, I thought, oh my gosh, I think this is a really good sign for our nest egg that we've been building and working on since Tim and I got married. And so when you have plants around your house, look for the ones that bloom or blossom or that don't do so very often, but look at when they do and notice if you see a change in your own life and look at where they're blooming to kind of make that determination of how they're going to influence you. Now let's talk about birds. Now birds are also an excellent sign. If you see a flock of birds, a picture of birds, a lone hawk or a falcon flying, they're all examples of great feng shui signs. Cranes in particular are thought to be good signs of both longevity, good fortune, and love, lasting and united love. White birds signal good health or bad situations becoming better. Birds flying over a house also bring good news of prosperity. Sometimes birds can also bring bad news, though. One of the most common sort of omens is considered to be a bird flying into the house. If a bird flies into the house, it's said that there will be someone who passes. And that many times has happened. We've talked a lot about that in our Facebook group. My Year of the Tiger Facebook group. I have that private group every year, and we have some really great discussions in that group. And this is a very common sort of omen for the Caribbean. We had a particular person who was from the Caribbean who said, yeah, it's always, hands down, bird flies in the house, that's it, something lights out for somebody. Something's happening somewhere. I also wanted to mention that I had an experience where we were all at home. My husband, my son, and I were all at home one day. We heard this loud thud, and we didn't know what the sound was. It sounded like a pipe. It sounded like something fell. We couldn't tell what it was. This went on. Sometime it was 5 days later, and I happened to be walking up the stairs and looked up. We have a very big sort of arched window over our front door. And I said, what are those little speckles there? And it was a bird had flown into the window so hard that there was blood left on the window. And I took that as not a positive sign. And then shortly after that, we did have some very bad news. And that was something that when I saw it, I just kind of felt like, oof, that's not good. And you kind of gird yourself. Okay, something's trying to tell me something. The universe is sending me a message, sending me a signal to pay attention. Let's talk about when you are going somewhere and you are maybe interested in buying a house or a car. You're looking at something and you're going out to make a big purchase. If you ever notice that there's a light breeze blowing and a really nice, it's not too harsh, it's not too slow, just a little air movement, but just a nice, pleasant breeze. If it greets you when you step out the door or step into the place where you're going to make the purchase, these are excellent signs. Light, comforting breezes are considered one of the best feng shui and augurs really good luck. Strong wind, however, will blow luck away. So I've got a really strong wind tonight, but that's going on outside of my window, and I'm hoping that isn't a sign. I'm just taking it as a sign that it's March. I'm going to leave it at that. that. But really pay attention to breezes, especially if you're coming to a house that you're looking to buy. Maybe you're going to go to the car lot and you're going to look at a car dealer to look for a new car, and this lovely breeze is there. That's always a good sign that that's a positive thing that you're doing. Let's talk about animals. They are also a good indicator of potential for whatever they represent. So, for instance, we talked about birds. The potential there is good news and good fortune. If you have a group of beautiful horses that's near you, or that's also a symbol of good fortune. Now, if you are working in the garden and you come across a tortoise or maybe some toads, that's a very good sign for money, for income, and opportunity. You know, beautiful animals are harbingers of good news and good outcomes. So pay close attention to the animal world at the start of any kind of undertaking or when times are stressful. Even butterflies are considered excellent and wonderful predictors of positive outcomes. And did you know that cows are symbols of wishes coming true? How lucky am I that I'm in South Texas where there are more cows than people? I guess I've got a lot of wishes I need to be making because I sure have a lot of cows around me, and I love them. They're beautiful animals. They're lovely creatures, and they're very peaceful. They always make me feel very calm and very relaxed. Look at those cows and remember that they represent wishes coming true. Let's talk about fruits and flowers. We touched on that, but they kind of work together. So if we see a tree that maybe flowers and then bears fruit, that's a wonderful thing. If you have plants around and trees around your garden and in your house, in the landscape, and they are bearing type trees. So for instance, I have orange tree and lemon trees and grapefruit trees, and they all bear fruit, and the house just feels so abundant and prosperous. This is a wonderful thing to have in your home. It's really interesting that last year was sort of this weird year financially. I think, it was like it was picking up really well, and then it just, I think the whole COVID thing, and then it came up, and then the gas and oil started changing, the prices going nuts with the invasion of Ukraine, and we started seeing, that there wasn't as much good fortune around. And this is one of the things that I look at my trees. And we had a very bad freeze the year before that. And last year's trees, I think my grapefruit tree, which had been absolutely loaded with magnificent ruby red grapefruit, had one grapefruit, one sad little grapefruit. And it's interesting now, I'm noticing that all of my citrus trees are blooming. Last year they didn't bloom, and I think that it was interesting to see the sort of the parallel lines of the economy and the parallel lines of my fruit trees and what was going on financially. And so I look at what's blooming. Is it blooming even? So for instance, I had a lemon tree that just kind of sat there, did nothing, and all these trees that weren't producing or blooming. So that's a really important thing to look at around your house to see if you can see fruits or flowers. And it's a beautiful image for you to put in your home. So if you can find pictures of a flowering or fruiting tree, that's a very auspicious symbol to have in your home. I love images of oranges. I have an addiction, I will tell you, to the magazine called Veranda. And I just love that magazine. I've loved it for years. And I kept one from, I think it was like 5 or 6 years ago. And it's an issue that shows paintings of a topiary with an orange topiary. It had a little topiary tree in this painting that had oranges all over it, little mandarins. And every time I see that painting, I just think, I wish I could have that in my house. Maybe I should see if I can get somebody to paint that for me. But if you can have those symbols in your house, take a look at those. Now look at symbols of wealth like red or orange, or look for that flower bush that rarely blooms. Take note of what's happening in your life where these flowers around your home or your trees begin to bloom. Pay close attention to that. Now let's talk about something a little bit more out there. How about heavenly visions? Do you see certain religious symbols or elements? This can be taken as a sign, as a stamp of approval of a higher order. So pay attention to symbols that you see that suggest spirituality, and this can even include your dreams. And I want to highly encourage you to pay attention to your dreams. Jot them down each morning just as you wake for clues about what's happening in your life. You know, dreams have served as such a wonderful symbolic interpretation of my life and warning. So when I have difficult dreams, like maybe I have a dream of bad weather or stormy weather, I always know something's going to be coming up. And so I know I'm prepared for it and I'm ready for it. These are things that I've come to be able to read in my own life is the dreams symbols that I'm seeing when I sleep at night, and when I wake up, I think about it first thing so that I actually do remember that. So I want to encourage you to pay close attention to your dreams because it really does make a difference. Let's talk about too some of the other things that you might be getting as a sign to pay attention to. So, for instance, let's talk about your attention. Sometimes you're driving down the road and something just gets your attention. Somehow you are just magnetized to look at a certain thing. Maybe it's a billboard. Maybe it's a pot of flowers on the porch. It could be a dog passing by. It could be any number of things. And they're trying to get your attention to tell you something. And so when your attention is captivated in some way, pay attention to that. Now, one of the ways that people do pay attention to that is when they see numbers, recurring numbers. Some people will see 333 or 1111 or different numbers will have different meanings to them. And so think about when you are seeing a recurrence of a particular number or set of numbers. It's usually trying to tell you something, and each of the numbers means something. And one of the things that I do sort of part ways with a little bit when it comes to numbers is I do look at the numerology of the numbers when I'm seeing them frequently. And one of the numbers that I often see so often is both when in the evening when I'm not working and have finished for the day, or when I wake up, is the number 611, because that's my date of birth is 611. And so I frequently see that number. When you add it all up, it's an 8. So I look at that from the 8 perspective of both the 8 in Feng Shui and the 8 in numerology. I also look at the other numbers as well, both from a Feng Shui portion and as well as the numerology portion. So for instance, I'll look at 6 and 11. 6 and 11 are two very important numbers in Feng Shui. In the number world of Feng Shui, a 6 is considered to be one of the most auspicious numbers. 1, 4, 6, and 8 are considered to be very auspicious. But 9 is also an auspicious number, and so is 10 and 11. So if you can always remember 8, 9, 10, 11. Those are very important numbers, just as the number 1. I also love the number 1 quite a lot. One of the numbers that I've noticed as being a hardship many times, and I notice it on these days, and I hope I don't make this a hardship for you, but there are days that are 5 days, and particularly on the calendar. So if it's the 23rd of whatever month, and I just kind of watch that day, stay a little on edge, maybe just a little extra watchful. 5 days seem to be a little bit hard. And as you look at Feng Shui, 5 is the 5 yellow. And when we see the 5 come into focus, whether it's at our front door or in our bedroom, it can sometimes portend difficulties. And we do have options for managing those difficulties in Feng Shui, but I don't know how to prevent it from being the 23rd of March or the 23rd 23rd of January. It just is going to be that way, right? So whether it's the 5th or the 23rd, maybe it's what I've noticed is it seems like it's the 23rd and the 5th seem to be most problematic. I don't seem to notice the 14th, but maybe I need to pay more attention to it. I like a 1 and a 4, though, a lot better than a 2 and 3 and a 5, because 2 and 3 are actually two very difficult numbers in Feng Shui. So this is really something that has borne out. We had some really bad news last week on the 23rd, and sure enough, when I looked at the day, it was the 23rd, and I remember even telling my husband earlier in the day, I said, "Oh, it's the 23rd today, isn't it?" I said, "I don't really like those 5 days," and sure enough, we got some difficult news. Now, this was news that came out that we didn't anticipate, and it wasn't something that I looked for. It just happened to come to fruition that day. So just like things can blossom in a positive way, things can sometimes blossom negatively. So look for those numbers or those dates. Now you might start paying attention to the 23rd or the 5th, and maybe you can send me a note and let me know. But if you have a particular day that seems to be problematic for you, I'd love to know what day that is. So we were talking earlier about heavenly vision. So we're going to go back off from numbers a little bit. One of the things that you want to do is, like I said, pay attention to your dreams, but also look around when you're confronted with a situation, like you have to make an important decision, such as buying a business, looking for a new house, deciding whether or not to get married, things like that, or making some sort of big step. Look outside of yourself for that cosmic thumbs up. It could be right in front of you or flying overhead. Animals are another symbol for us that we might want to pay close attention to. Now, one of the common thoughts in Feng Shui is to pay close attention to animals, especially if you're about to embark on a journey. Now, this is another time you're going to want to pay close attention. Whenever you're stepping out to go embark on a trip or to go away somewhere, pay close attention to what you're seeing and what comes across your path as you're heading toward the airport or getting on your way on the road. In Feng Shui thought, seeing a dead dog is often thought as a very bad sign and a negative sign that there will be difficulties on the trip or problems with the trip. Dead animals in general are not always looked upon favorably. You might want to look at the type of animal that you're seeing that's dead. So, for instance, a dog might be loss of something that's dear to you, because animals, so like dogs and cats, are very much a part of our family experience and a part of our life experience. If you see a dead fish, there might be a loss of some type of income or opportunity. The same with a tortoise or maybe even a mouse or a rat. When you see mice or a rat, now typically no one's really happy to see a rat, but actually a rat, if it's not in your house, is often a sign of an opportunity or good income, because rats are considered to be industrious and they're associated with the income and career and business portion of the bagua. So I find that very fascinating about how to look at animals, whether they're alive or dead, and how you feel about them. And that's a really important thing to think about, is how you feel about something when you're trying to interpret a sign from the universe. Think about your dreams. So sometimes when you think about the dream that you may have had the night before, it might seem kind of weird and it might seem peculiar, but explain it to somebody or think of it in very simple terms about what you actually saw versus how your instinctual reaction to it. Because sometimes the dreams, like especially when it comes to dreams that revolve around sex or death, it's not always about sex or death. It may be about something completely different. It may be, you may dream of an animal dying, for instance, and for you that may represent a part of life that needs to be let go of for you. And the same thing about with sex. You'll have to kind of interpret what certain dreams mean to you. Just remember that there are a lot of ways to feel about certain situations that are coming up, whether that's a new endeavor, a trip you're embarking on, a house that you're purchasing, or maybe a car that you want to buy, or something that you're doing in your life. Remember, look at those signs whenever you are looking for a new home to buy, or making an important decision, or when there's an important event happening, or you're beginning a new endeavor, or it's like a new trip, or starting a business. Look at the signs that come into your life as you're embarking on that new journey. So let's look for some tips to leave you with today about reading the signs from the universe. Tip number 1, look for what's happening with the weather. Is it raining? That's a blessing. I know it rained on my wedding day, even though it had been dry for 2 months. We had just a really odd downpour that just totally came and totally left and left with the heat. So if it rains as you're beginning to embark on a new endeavor or a journey, that's a good sign. Look for wind too. Pleasant, beautiful breezes, always a good sign. Tip number 2, look for animals. When you see a beautiful butterfly going past you, birds going past you, those are wonderful signs from the universe. And lastly, look for beautiful flowers. Tip number 3, make sure that you pay close attention to your garden, because your garden may offer you all kinds of beautiful symbols to use as an interpretation of new life and new growth and opportunity coming to you wherever that part of the garden is. So if it's in the southwest corner and something begins to bloom, that could be a potential sign for a new potential romance. If you find it in the southeast corner, like I did with my orchid, maybe that's a good sign for your assets and your investments. So look around for those signs and keep your eyes open. You never know where you're going to see them. Well, if you enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor. If you haven't gone over and liked my Facebook page, I'd appreciate it if you did. Just go over to facebook.com/Red Lotus Letter, all one word, and just hit the like button. I sure would appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And if you like any episode that you hear on 5 Minute Feng Shui, please share that with your friends on Instagram or on Facebook. Thank you so much, and read the signs. I hope you get many beautiful ones. I'll talk to you next week on 5 Minute Feng Shui. Have a great week. Hey, thanks for listening today. Although the year of the tiger is here, it's come in with a roar, and there's going to be some big ups and downs this year, like the invasion in Ukraine. But I wrote about Putin and some of the other world leaders in the Year of the Tiger Feng Shui Forecast and Success Pack. Now, back in 2021, when I was writing this in the fall, I could see this on the horizon and I warned about it. There's other things that you're going to want to know too, like where to invest your money, where to find love, and what to expect all year. And I cover all houses and bedroom directions and every zodiac sign. The Success Pack will help you be ready for the year, be prepared, make more money, and keep fortune on your side. Check out the Year of the Tiger Feng Shui Forecast at redlotusletter.com/water tiger, all one word.